Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick Lepri of Stokastic.com, and in today's video, we're going to be going in-depth into my week number 11 FanDuel Contenders, where we'll be talking about the top 8 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends in terms of optimal percentage for week number 11. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you do leave a like on today's video. It would help us out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. We're going to be talking about our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 FanDuel Contenders. We begin with the quarterback position at number 8 with Mac Jones of the New England Patriots going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in New England, 6,500. At number 7, we have Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, 8,300. At 6, we have Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota, 7,500. The list begins where we have the real breakdown at number 5. These players are listed in order of their optimal percentage. At number 1 is going to be the most optimal quarterback. At number 8 is the least optimal out of the top 8. So at number 5, we have Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos going up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home in Denver, 6,900 for Russell Wilson. Now, his optimal percentage on the week is 6.1, and his boom percentage is also 6.1. And over on Stokastic, we have projected for 18.1 fantasy points. The Broncos have the 12th highest implied point total on the week with 22, tied with the Green Bay Packers, and they are 2.5 favorites up against a putrid Las Vegas Raiders team as a whole. Their offense is a disaster. Their defense is a disaster. The only non-disaster is Daniel Carlson, their kicker. Josh McDaniels has been really bad, but it came out today that the team can't even fire him because they don't have enough money to replace him, so they're just going to stick with him for the next 2 years. Maybe they end up getting rid of him, but that's just the report that I read today. Russell Wilson has been putrid all year long. His only really good performance was up against this Raiders team a couple of weeks ago, so if there was ever to be another big game out of Mr. Unlimited, it would be this week up against the Raiders. At number 4, we have Daniel Jones of the Giants going up against the Detroit Lions at home in MetLife, 7,800. We currently have projected for 19.9 fantasy points, 7th in implied point total on the week for the Giants with 24.5, and they're 3-point favorites up against a bad Lions defense, 6.10 optimal percentage, 6.4 boom percentage. Daniel Jones did perform quite well up against the Houston Texans last week, but obviously a lot of people thought that because the Houston Texans defense is absolute dog shit, but as is the Detroit Lions defense. Those are two of the worst defenses, in my opinion, in the National Football League. Stacking Daniel Jones is a little bit tough because it's hard every single week to truly believe in some of the weapons that they have, because while they all play pretty good because of the system that Brian Daboll has put for the team, the fact is, it's not like Darius Slayton is Randy Moss or something, right? So Wan'Dale Robinson, they have these pieces. It's always hard to pick which piece goes with Daniel Jones, but if you pick the piece correctly against the Lions, it could be incredibly fruitful. At number 3, we have Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis, $8,800 on FanDuel this week. We currently have projected for 21.9 fantasy points, 4th in implied point total with 25.75 for the Eagles, tied with the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers, 6.5-point favorites, 7.8 optimal percentage, and a 7.3 boom percentage. The Indianapolis Colts really woke up last week up against the Las Vegas Raiders. That firing of Frank Reich and bringing in Jeff Saturday really pumped the team up. They were really fired up. That was the best Matt Ryan's looked all year. The man looked like fucking Michael Vick running 30 yards up the field. It was incredible, but now they're going to get knocked down a peg, right? They're, hurrah, Jeff Saturday, this, that, the other thing. I understand the Eagles just lost to the Commanders, but I really think the Eagles are going to lay a smackdown WWE style on this Indianapolis Colts defense. I know the price is quite high at $8,800 for Jalen Hurts, but I think this is a huge bounce back game for this Eagles team. At number 2, we have Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Cleveland Browns, 9,200, the highest priced quarterback on the week on FanDuel. We currently have them projected for 23.7 fantasy points. They are 4th in implied point total with 25.5, tied with the Eagles and the Niners. They are 8.5-point favorites in this spot. I think that's going to move as it seems more and more like this is going to be a snow game. I've seen reports that say it might be 6-7 feet of snow. Now, obviously, they have this cool thing called shovels, but if it keeps snowing during the game and it's windy, it's a blizzard, then it's going to have to be a lot of running from both sides, which would obviously point towards a more positive game for the Browns because their rushing attack is better, thus moving the spread. Again, right now it's 8.5, 10.7 optimal percentage, 9.1 boom percentage. I am putting a red flag, a stamp on Josh Allen right now because we don't know the game conditions on Sunday. These people that report the weather could be lying. On Sunday, might be sunny, perfectly fine. But we could also get to Sunday, there might be 7 feet of fucking snow. So this is something to wait for on Sunday. We'll have a much better idea, obviously, of the conditions of the field in Buffalo prior to kickoff. At number 1, we have Lamar Jackson of the Ravens going up against the Carolina Panthers at home in Baltimore, 8,400. Currently projected for 23.1 fantasy points. They have the second highest implied point total on the week with 27.75. They're 12-point favorites, 13 optimal percentage, 12.5 boom percentage. The Carolina Panthers are not very good at all. Baker Mayfield will be under center. Lamar Jackson has been on a downward spiral, and ever since the first couple of weeks, early on, it looked like he was going to be the MVP of the NFL. Recently, he's kind of fallen off the edge of the earth, but if there was ever a game, a get-right game, it would be up against a putrid Panthers defense. Now we move to the running back position, beginning at number 8 with Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against the Indianapolis Colts, 7,300. At 7, we have the other running back in that game, Jonathan Taylor of the Colts, going up against the Eagles, 8,700. At 6, we have Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Browns, 6,400. Again, important to note, if this game does snow a bunch, we just saw Singletary feast a little bit up against the Minnesota Vikings. Should be a very run-heavy game on both sides of the ball, elevating both 9-inch Nicholas Chubb and Devin Singletary, in my opinion, up the board. At number 5 with the true breakdown, Saquon Barkley of the Giants going up against the Detroit Lions, priced at $9,700 on FanDuel. That is very expensive for good reason, though. Projected for 18 fantasy points, 7th in implied point total on the week with 24.5, 3-point favorites, 14.5 optimal percentage, 8.8 boom percentage. The reason why he's ranked at 5 is because of the price. Building your lineup around a running back that costs $9,700 at points can be difficult. Again, there's obvious reasons to like him. We talked about it with Danny Dimes. The Lions defense is fucking bad. Saquon Barkley is really good. So it makes sense. You can add it up in your brain very quickly that, hey, Saquon Barkley should have a good spot. Again, the price is really the only worry when it comes to Barkley. At number 4, we have Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Denver Broncos at home in Viva Las Vegas. $8,500 for Jacobs on FanDuel. Projected for 15 fantasy points, 19th in implied point total on the week for the Raiders, 19.5 points projected for them. 2.5-point dogs against the Broncos, 16.2 optimal percentage, 7.1 boom percentage. Last time these two teams played, Josh Jacobs went on a Thanksgiving level feast. 144 rushing yards on 28 carries for 2 rushing touchdowns and 31 receiving yards. This guy has been feasting for at least the last 2 years on the Broncos, because even going back to last year, their last time out in 2021, 129 rushing yards on 27 attempts. So the guy, he's got it out for the Denver Broncos, I guess, even though the Broncos defense is really good. That is the key part of their offense, or their team, is their defense. The offense is kind of no bueno, but that offense, or the defense, is really good. Even with that said, though, even though the defense is scary, I really think this is the big spot out of Josh Jacobs that we've been waiting for over the last couple of weeks. And that's not to discredit what he did last week against the Colts, but I think he could do better this week. At number 3, we have Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints going up against the LA Rams. But before we break down the rest of the running backs, Alvin Kamara, then we're going to go to the receivers and the tight ends. I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. We have this great offer for you right now, which is a BetMGM risk-free bet of up to $1,000. And once you place that bet and it settles, you will get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum to get all the tools that I'm using in today's video. All these stats are read off from the pages over on our website that you guys can get updated on Sunday, because obviously things are going to change from Wednesday today all the way until Sunday. All you got to do is deposit at least $10 on BetMGM. Once you make that bet and it settles, you will qualify for a Stokastic subscription, and they will send you an email on how to activate those 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Make sure you check it out down below in the video description. The risk-free bet is up to $1,000. So make sure you guys do go ahead and check that out. If your risk-free bet loses, it will be refunded using site credit on their site. So back on into things here. At number 3, again, we have Alvin Kamara of the Saints. So the Saints are rolling with Andy Dalton again this week. Brutal watching Andy Dalton. I think I'd rather just walk on a bunch of glass, but it's what we get. In terms of Alvin Kamara's production, I think it's better to have Andy Dalton, but in terms of a viewing experience as a viewer of all these Saints games, I'd rather just be watching watching Jameis Winston, and I think basically everyone could agree with me except for maybe Andy Dalton's family. Projected for 15 fantasy points for Kamara, 15th in implied point total with 21.5, tied with the Lions and the Chargers. They're 4-point favorites in this spot up against either Stafford or John Wolford. 20.6 optimal percentage, 8.2 boom percentage. We have seen extremely high highs out of Alvin Kamara, and we have seen the down astronomical lows this season. We've seen huge games and games where you roll your eyes and you're like, why in God's name did I pay all this money for Alvin Kamara? This week he gets the Rams. The Rams defense has definitely downgraded since last season. The whole team is a downgrade. It's like the Walmart version of the Rams from last season. I think Kamara can get it done in this spot. 7,500 is a really good price for him, especially when Jacobs is 8,500 up against a stout Broncos defense. At number 2, we have Dameon Pierce, my guy of the Houston Texans, going up against the Washington Commanders at home in Houston, 7,600. Projected for 15.5 fantasy points, 22.5 optimal percentage, 10.2 boom percentage. They're 3-point dogs, and they have the 22nd highest implied point total on the week with 18.75. The biggest issue with Dameon Pierce is that his team is absolute horseshit. The Houston Texans are so bad. Like, every game you watch Dameon Pierce, and you're like, this guy is so good. Imagine if he was on a team that wasn't this bad. Like, imagine if with the last 10 minutes in the game, the Houston Texans weren't down, so they could just run. Because if they could just run, Dameon Pierce would be getting so many free points. He hasn't been getting as many receptions as of recently, but this matchup is pretty decent up against the Commanders. The Commanders defense, typically around the halfway point of the season, wakes up a little bit. They have definitely woken up. They woke up in a big way up against the Eagles. I think this is a letdown spot for the Commanders. I did think they'd be favorited a little bit more in this spot. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I don't think they're going to just beat the dog piss out of the Houston Texans. So Dameon Pierce is in a pretty interesting spot. At number 1, we have Ramondre Stevenson. His name is so long, we had to shorten it. R. Stevenson of the Patriots going up against the Jets, 8,100. This game, in my opinion, is going to be an incredibly run-heavy affair from both sides, even without Breece Hall, with James Robinson and Michael Carter. I believe that the Jets are going to look to run the ball a lot. I think the Patriots will do the same thing. Ramondre Stevenson has clearly taken over from Damian Harris as the clear bell cow back. He's the guy of this offense. We currently have him projected for 17 fantasy points. They only have the 18th highest implied point total on the week, which shouldn't be surprising, though, because the over-under in this game is very low. 3-point favorites, 25.7 optimal percentage, 13.9 boom percentage. I will be paying up for Ramondre Stevenson this week. I fully believe in the $8,100 price tag. I know the Jets defense looks good, but Ramondre Stevenson looks even better. Next up, we move to the wide receiver position. At number 8, we have A.J. Brown, who put up not a goose egg, but essentially a goose egg up against the Commanders on Monday Night Football, going up against the Colts in Indy, 8,400. Davante Adams, who is on the injury report right now of the Raiders, going up against the Broncos, 8,500. Not sure I like that against the Broncos defense, especially at the price. T. Higgins of the Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 7,600. At 5, we have C.D. Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota, 8,100. Projected for 13.6 fantasy points, 8th in implied point total with 24.25. 1-point favorites, 14.5 optimal percentage, 8.4 boom percentage. Now, despite the fact that the Dallas Cowboys offense wasn't the best last week up against the Packers, despite the fact that on paper the Packers defense was banged up, this looked like an excellent spot for the Cowboys. The Cowboys lose, but even with that said, CD Lamb goes off in that game. He goes nuclear. We just saw the Vikings defense play really well up against the pass of the Buffalo Bills, but I honestly blame that more on Josh Allen than say that the Vikings have this elite defense. Vikings fans, don't worry, I'm not discrediting your team, they've really shocked me. They are really good. I think they could easily beat the Cowboys here, even though the Cowboys are 1-point favorites. This is an interesting spot for Lamb coming off a heater of a game. I like the price, though, and I like the stack with Dak Prescott this week. At number 4, we have my guy Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints going up against the LA Rams, 6,900. For Chris Olave's sake, we need the boy, famous Jameis, to come back because it's hard to see a game, in my opinion, where Chris Olave is the number one receiver. Like, it hits the nuts. I understand at the price he's worth it, right? 6,900, it's amazing for him, right? He's such a good fucking player. But it's hard to see him be the true nuts for me because of the fact that Andy Dalton just limits him. Jameis is apparently banged up. Okay, Dennis Allen. Projected for 11.4 fantasy points, 15th in implied point total, 21.5 with the Lions. They are 4-point favorites in this spot up against the Rams, 15.1 optimal percentage for Olave, 5.4 boom percentage. Look, again, the Rams defense, it's not the Rams defense from last year. Michael Thomas is out. There's not the heaviest of target competition for Olave. Again, my only worry, like the devil versus the angel on my shoulder. The angels tell me, Nick, Olave is fucking amazing. He's great. The matchup against the Rams isn't the best, but the price tag tells me you love him. The devil saying, Nick, Andy Dalton. So that's kind of my breakdown on Olave, but I am so excited to get him at 7,000, 6,900 once Jameis comes back because, man, oh man, I could see Chris Olave going nuclear. At number 3, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions going up against the Giants in New York, technically New Jersey, 7,800 projected for 14 fantasy points, 15.2 optimal percentage, 7.6 boom percentage, 15th in implied point total, tied with the Saints and the Chargers, 3-point dogs. Woof, woof. Amon-Ra St. Brown, after weeks of me kind of banging the drum for him on these videos on both FanDuel and DraftKings, he finally arises last week. Great to see for my guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Giants defense, I talked about this in the DraftKings version of this video. It's very funny because you look on paper, you read the depth chart, you're like, wow, this defense is not good. And then you watch them play, and you're like, wow, is Brian Daboll a fucking genius? Is this guy Albert Einstein or something, right? Because how this defense plays compared to the talent that they have is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. Amon-Ra St. Brown should be in for a decent spot here. The price, 7,800, is pretty decent for him. At number 2, we have Justin Jefferson, Jay Jettas, who just literally slung his nuts on the shoulder of the Buffalo Bills. That was the best receiver performance I've seen in a while. That was truly amazing. It was like, it was crazy. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it was really like, if you've ever played NFL Street back in the day on like the PS2, it was like when you got Game Breaker on offense. That's what Justin Jefferson did. He had like the NBA Jam on fire. He had the Game Breaker activated. It was crazy. Like, that game was nuts. But we're not here to talk about the Bills and the Vikings recap. We're here to break down the rest of these players for FanDuel Contenders. Projected for 15.6 fantasy points. The price is crazy, 9,100. 16.8 optimal percentage, 11.2 boom percentage, 1-point dogs against the Cowboys, which again, I still don't understand. The game's at home in Minnesota and they're dogs. Sure, the Cowboys fans are probably happy. Oh my God, they're favorites. I don't know. I'm not betting on this game. I would stay away from it because it seems like a trap performance here. But Justin Jefferson, downright incredible, downright amazing. Tyreek doesn't get to play this week, my guy. So Justin Jefferson makes sense inside the top 2. At number 1, we have a guy that might not even play, but I did want to put him in here because I think there's still a chance he does play. And at his price, against a terrible Raiders defense, like, this is an amazing spot. So Jerry Jeudy, $6,000 if he plays. If he doesn't play, then Sutton's going to move up a ton in my personal rankings. Projected for 11 fantasy points on Stokastic, 12th in implied point total, with 22, tied with the Green Bay Packers, 2.5-point favorites, 20.1 optimal percentage, 7.6 boom percentage. Got a feel for Jerry Jeudy, the player. He's been getting so hurt every year in the NFL. It sucks. But if he plays again, this is such a great spot. My final position here, we're going to go with the tight ends. Everyone loves a nice tight end. Wink, wink, wink. Get it? Very funny. Tyler Higbee of the LA Rams going up against the Saints in New Orleans, 6,200. Dalton Schultz of the Cowboys at 7 up against the Minnesota Vikings, 5,900 in Minnesota. Dawson Knox one time if you're with me in potentially a fucking blizzard and not the one from Dairy Queen, 5,100. At 5, we have Hayden Hurst of the Bengals going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, 5,200. Without Jamar Chase, realistically, Hayden Hurst's upside is higher. We got him projected for 7.1 fantasy points. Again, $5,200 on FanDuel. 11th in implied point total with 22.75. 4.5 point dog, 7.2 optimal percentage, 3.6 boom percentage. The Steelers defense is way better with TJ Watt back. I know TJ Watt isn't going to fucking go toe-to-toe with Hayden Hurst, but the team as a whole, like their record, if you go look it up, I don't know the exact record off the top of my head, but the Pittsburgh Steelers with versus without TJ Watt, it is shocking how much impact he makes on this team. It's crazy. But Hayden Hurst, tight end number 5. At number 4, we have the Viking. The guy who looks like a Viking, who is now an actual Minnesota Viking, TJ Hawkinson, going up against the Cowboys, 6,500, projected for 9.4 fantasy points, 10th in implied point total on the week with 23.25, 1 point dogs, 7.5 optimal percentage, 6.8 boom percentage. The Cowboys defense did play good against Tonyan last week, but with Christian Watson going so crazy, they didn't have to look as much at Robert Tonyan. Interesting spot for him. 6,500 is a little high for the other tight ends that are ahead of them, though, in my opinion. At number 3, we have a cheaper option, Pat Freiermuth, with I just said like 50 times in a row. I apologize for that. $5,400 of the Steelers going up against the Bengals, projected for 8.9 fantasy points, 23rd in implied point total, 18.25, 4.5 point dogs, 12.4 optimal percentage, 8.5 boom percentage. Pat Freiermuth without Chase Claypool's upside has went up a bunch. Kenny Pickett loves to throw the ball to Pat Freiermuth a ton. This could be a really high-scoring game, or it could end up being a low-scoring game because these two teams know each other so well. Should be interesting to watch. Freiermuth is one of my favorite tight ends, if I'm being honest with you. At 5,400, the only guy I like more is the next guy here. Greg Dulcich of the Broncos going up against the Raiders, 5,500. Dulcich shit the bed last week. He was a guy that I jammed in every single lineup. Every lineup basically had Greg Dulcich. Not all of them, but almost all of them. And it was a disaster, as they say. It's a disaster. But projected for 8.6 fantasy points, 12th in implied point total, tied with the Packers, 2.5 point favorites, 12.5, 12.6 optimal percentage, 7.7 boom percentage. The Raiders defense is just so dick cheese that I like Dulcich to bounce back. Prior to last week, he had 3 games in a row where he was incredible for fantasy football, especially at price. I think he could smash the projections and score like 12 to 15 points. So I'm a big fan of Dulcich this week. Final tight end here is Mark Andrews of the Ravens going up against the Carolina Panthers. 7,700 projected for 14 fantasy points. The belief right now is that Andrews will play, but it is up in the air. Second in implied point total, 22.75, 12 point favorites, 20.4, optimal percentage, 21.3. Boom percentage. The matchup against the Carolina Panthers will give you a wet dream. When Andrews is healthy, there's good reason to pay up for Andrews, especially with no Kelsey on this slate. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Make sure you guys check out that BetMGM risk-free bet link down below in the video description and in the pinned comment. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.